Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world. I'm Sarah Jane. This is Gift of Healing TV, and welcome to this week's program. We're joined this week by Pennie Quaile-Pearce, who is going to be sharing with us the amazing power of breath. So I'm really looking forward to this. Pennie, welcome. I'm going to introduce you formally, but I'd just like to say a quick hello. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, how are you this evening? And welcome to everybody else.
No, brilliant. Let me introduce Pennie. CEO of Acorn to Oak, the International School of Energy Medicine. Pennie's role is to keep the vibration of acorn to oak at the highest and most pure. Her experience encompasses over 20 years in the field of orthodox medicine, specializing in trauma and intensive care, which includes work with the Red Cross and International Voluntary Services, the IVS. She trained as a homeopath, Reiki master teacher, and Bodhi Soul Breathwork practitioner. Pennie went on to write and introduce Breath for Life, which is trademarked, Breathwork into the UK, and the first set of Breath for Life, excuse me, it's the TM that's throwing me, Breathwork practitioners were trained in 2005. A life, love, and spiritual coach guide, spiritual response therapist, a trained teacher who specialized in course creation and development. Clients call Pennie a spiritual midwife. Pennie calls herself a divine waitress. She is all of these things and a spiritual entrepreneur. That's a mouthful. And what a lot you've done. Pennie, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. When I hear someone else say that, I go, really? Who's that? I'm just Pennie.
I actually think that all of us feel exactly the same, because at the end of the day, we're just who we are. It's good.
And we are all divine beings on a path, and it's important to remember that. But it's amazing when you write down your credentials, because it always sounds amazingly grandiose, whereas in fact we are just who we are, and we're women in business, and we're moving forward.
And we're just bringing our gifts. In this case, you're bringing the gift of breath and breathing properly. And I'd like to say hi to Karen, who's joined us from Paris, one of our regulars. And I think that said Nishad, who's
yes, from West Byfleet.
West Byfleet. So someone you know, obviously. Brilliant. So Pennie, first of all, before we go into the breath work, share a little of your story. I know you've obviously we've said what you've done, but how this side of it came about, because I know with a lot of people, something traumatic or something happens, but it's a share a little of your story and how it came about.
Well, I suppose really my story, as I said, you read from the bio, I started my life as a nurse, and I think one of the things about intensive care nursing is it's very high pressure, very fast, very, very quick. And I got to the stage where I was actually a clinical expert in my field, and I was standing at the end of the bed one day during an emergency, and just standing there watching us pushing in huge amounts of chemical drugs, huge amount, taking really quite aggressive intervention. And I just stood there and thought, there's got to be a better way than this. There must be something better. This poor person was going through an enormous amount of trauma, and it just felt wrong at that stage for me. And I stood back and I went, well, if we're going to find a better way, I better start researching now. and basically then started to look at homeopathy. Was the first thing I started to look at, because I could understand, and I suppose it equated, you know, it fitted in my values and my thoughts at the time, that, you know, giving someone a pill, you know, I could understand that, and signed up, and actually Jill's on the call, I see, who was there in those days when I first trained as a homeopath, and basically just went through an enormous shifting over those 4 years of training to be a homeopath. I didn't trust homeopathy at first. I didn't take a homeopathic remedy for the first year because I just didn't trust that it would work, because you know, in orthodoxy, we talk about it's the law of opposites. So if you have a burn, you put your hand in cold water to cool it down. In homeopathy, you'd put your hand in warm or hot water to stop the blister forming, and it works. And try it out, by all means, try it out. And then I suddenly started to realize, obviously, the energetic component part was the thing that fascinated me the most, and that's when I became an energy junkie and wanted to know more. A friend who was in the same year as myself, I had, again, nurses tend to suffer from bad backs, and I had a bad back, and he gave me some Reiki, and he sorted out my back problem with Reiki. And I just thought, wow, this is real interesting. I want to know more. And you go through various different stages when you start to wake up or grow. And I was like a sponge at the beginning, wanting to know all sorts of different things, wanting to know how Reiki worked, how did reflexology work, how did all sorts of different modalities work. And that was very much part of my journey back, sort of 18, nearly 20 years ago, and refining. But I like things that are effective, that really work and can take people to another level. So I was introduced to breathwork during my homeopathic training, and again, like anything, when you're driving a car, it takes you 1 or 2 lessons to become reasonably competent. But going through that process, suddenly realized that this was a tool that everybody could use. No special equipment. It's about breath, and it's about using your own breath in order to I suppose peel back the layers of the onion so that you can get to the core. So that's, I suppose, very much about a bit of my story, and it has helped me shift through enormous amounts of pathology. It's also helped me through enormous amounts of emotional things that needed to be cleared. And I think one of the first things that needed to be cleared was all of the rubbish I had managed to collect around myself during my nursing career, because nobody gives you any debrief, nobody gives you any time to talk about how you feel or how you felt after an emergency, or working in a disaster area, or whatever it is. They expect nurses to cope. Unfortunately, nurses are very human and do carry this stuff a lot. So yeah, so self-healing, very much.
Absolutely. And I think the majority of us that work with the energies, whatever the energies are, it's been for the majority of it, it has been our own self-healing process that then brings us on to be able to help others to go through their own health self-healing process, so they move on and help more, etc., etc.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, this is the one thing in healing yourself, you heal thousands, because when you do your work, then you're passing on that information, or you're saying, hey, have you tried this, or have you seen that book, or have you tried this? And it's a really important part of the process, part of the path of self-healing, is to, you know, to help other people along the way. That's what keeps you sane. Because, you know, again, we all need I've gone word shy. We all need validation on what we're experiencing, and, you know, and turning around to another person and saying, "Did you see that?" or "Is that your experience?" And when they come back at you and say yes, then you know you're not going crazy.
Yeah, I know there are times when we all think, did that really happen? And yes, the truth is that there are some amazing conversations that go on amongst, because we're all actually all on the same wavelength, and the more people that can join us, the better. So, which is why this program is done, to help people realize what is out there. And even if Reiki doesn't work for you, or breathwork doesn't work for you, or the metamorphic or whatever doesn't work for you, there'll be something that we share that will be what you're looking for. And that's the joy of it. It really is. Breathwork. Should we get a little bit into this? And I know you've said you've got a short demonstration for us as well. That's brilliant. So you would be putting it an exploration of the power of breath.
Yeah, I suppose it's really important. It's the one thing that in our bodies that we can have conscious or no conscious control of whatsoever. We don't have to think about it. We're breathing in every day when we're awake and when we're asleep. We don't have to think, but we can think about breath and take a breath. And I suggest we all do that now. So we just take a breath. And you realize that actually you can breathe deeply, you can breathe shallow. It doesn't matter, but you can take charge of the process. In every other system in the body, we don't have conscious control. Our heart beats, whether we're awake or we're asleep. We don't have to worry about it. You know, our digestion continues when we've had something to eat. You know, we don't have to worry about our lymphatics. We don't have to worry about all of these things. They're automatic. But the one thing that is not automatic, although it can be, is the breath. We can take control of it. And when we look at that, and we look at to breathe in is inspiration. We inspire. So even just the word, you realize that it has a much bigger connection. Carl Jung would say that the quickest way to change your consciousness is to change the way you breathe. And we know this from the Eastern traditions of yoga, and you know, all sorts of the swamis all know that if you change the way you breathe, then you change your consciousness level. And that's really important, because breath work will move the conscious mind out of the way and allow the subconscious to take over. And the subconscious is where we put things. You know, we put all of our, you know, when we learn to drive, we do it consciously at the beginning, and then suddenly this gets to a stage where we put it into our subconscious, and, you know, we drive down the road and we suddenly think, I wonder how I got to work this morning. Well, I drove, there's my car parked there, but we have not done it consciously, we've done it subconsciously. And it's the same thing happens when we don't want to feel an emotion. You know, we could be driving down the road and someone pulls out in front of us, and we get, you know, we get a bit of a shock, and we then take a breath. We usually hold it, we tense up and we hold it, and what actually happens is we suppress the fear, but could well express the anger by winding down the window and suggesting that the person's parents weren't married. So it's a case of then, okay, so where do we put that? Where do we actually put it in, and we talk in breathwork about containers, and we talk about mad, sad, glad, scared, and you know, mad being anything from being slightly cheesed off to absolute rage, which could be red rage or it could be icy cold rage. And then, so that's the mad container. The sad container can be anything from being mildly disappointed, they don't have your favorite ice cream in the corner shop, to absolute catatonic grief. Scared could be anything from being mildly anxious, which I was slightly before we started this program, because I didn't know whether I could do all of the parts, to absolute terror. And glad can be anything from being reasonably good to absolute bliss. And when we suppress these emotions into the containers, over time those containers get full. And looking at it from another way, you know, the subconscious, you can equate that very much to a cupboard or a wardrobe. And in that wardrobe, we stuff all of those clothes that we bought as an impulse buy, and we hung it up in the cupboard, and we've got loads of clothes and jumpers and all sorts of stuff stuffed into that wardrobe that we hardly ever use, because we only use the ones that we like. And so they're all in there, and unless you actually go in there and start clearing out the clutter and taking away those size 12 jeans which you can't get into anymore, or that wonderful Christmas jumper that your mother-in-law bought you last year and you don't really like, and you start moving it and clearing it out, there's no room to put anything else in it. And this is when people actually start talking to me about, but Pennie, you know, my memory's not as good as it used to be. I don't find I have as much energy as I used to have. You know, this pattern keeps on reoccurring in my life. What's this going on? And I go back to them and I say, you know, how's the cupboard? How's the wardrobe? Conscious. What have you got in there that's outmoded and no longer serves you? You know, we all have stuff from our childhoods which we've been told, you know, it may be something that we were told incessantly, like, you know, you're a clumsy girl, or you're not very bright when it comes to maths. You know, you're no good at sport, but you're really good at this. And you know, we keep all of those thoughts and all of those things in our subconscious. And unless we actually clear the clutter, it is going to run our lives. What is amazing about breathwork is it moves the conscious mind out of the way and allows the subconscious to take over. So it's like going through that cupboard at speed and just not worrying about what it is, but actually just getting rid of it and putting it in that black plastic bag so you can take it to the dump or wherever it is. But it actually takes it out of your energy field so you no longer have to hold it. So that's a quick thing. So talking about breath, and I said we would do this small exercise. So if we started to take a breath, and we're just breathing in with a little bit of energy, so it's a breath, and then the out breath is a sighing breath. So the sighing breath is, it's not pushing it out, so it's not a, it's a, and literally that's all there is to it. However, you obviously, because it's a connected breath, you're connecting the out and the in breath together. So if you can hear me, it's a, so what I would like all the callers, the people who are listening, I invite you to do that breath with me right now. So for the next minute, we're just going to breathe in and out in a nice, natural rhythm. So breathing in. Keep that rhythm going. And then what I'd like you to do is take 5, add 3, 2, add 1. And what's the answer? And what you find, and someone will probably come back with it, with the answer any second now, what you find when you're breathing in that way, the conscious mind is moved out of the way, and your subconscious mind, during a breath work, you would basically be doing that type of breath for about an hour and a half. And people look at you sideways and go, what, an hour and a half? That's crazy. However, when people come around from a breath work, they'll say, how long were we breathing? And they'll say, yeah, it only felt like 20 minutes. It only felt like this. What happens is, it's when you go into the subconscious, and obviously part of the process is getting people into the alpha state, which is the hyper creative state, is that time and space mean nothing, and you go on a journey. And I usually talk about the journey being like getting on a train. And you know, the first couple of minutes when you get on the train is you're getting all your gear out, you know, out of your backpack or wherever, you know, your phone and your music and your paper or your book, and you've got loads of different stuff that you're just putting out there. And then the train, you know, will close its doors and you start off, and it's, you know, tickety boo, tickety boo, tickety boo, and it's you get into the rhythm of the train, and after a little while that is not there anymore, and suddenly you're going from Euston to Glasgow. You punch out of London and suddenly you're in the countryside. And if it's a nice day and it's beautiful and you've got the train tickety boo and everything, you're watching all of the nice scenery, you're watching what's going on, you're listening to your music, you're in your own groove, and everything's great. And then suddenly, after some time, you may hit Birmingham. And I do apologise to everybody from Birmingham, because one of these days I'm going to get myself into serious trouble. Someone from Birmingham is definitely going to be there. And you hit Birmingham, and if you know what Birmingham's like, the train station there is all of these different lines coming in from all sorts of different areas, and you hit it, and it's at that stage, again equating it to breath work, it may be one of those slightly difficult emotions, some of them mad, some of them scared, or some of the sad. And you've got a choice there and then, and you can try and backpedal and get out. You can slow down and get stuck, or you can quicken the breath up and punch through and go back out into the countryside. And that time that you're only in Birmingham is probably maybe only seconds, maybe only minutes, but you're through it and basically back out into the countryside. And by the time you get to Glasgow, you've done it once, you can do it again. It's really important. You know, I was talking to a mum actually earlier on today, and we were laughing and joking, and I said, just think of it like Lamaze, the Lamaze breath. You know, if you breathe during the actual labour, what you do is you forget the pain. And okay, fair enough, after the first, you know, half an hour or whatever after childbirth, yes, you remember the pain. But after 2 hours or 3 hours, you know, most mums would turn around and say, yes, I would do it again. I would go through labour again. Because look at what I have as the result. A beautiful baby. And it's the same with breath work. It may be tough going through some of it, but actually what you gain is a pot of gold at the end, because your whole life changes. Because once you have decluttered, those patterns are no longer there. Those issues are no longer there. And people talk about the sky looking bluer and, you know, the trees being greener. And I go, yeah, that's really true. Because what happens is you've taken away some of those things that are getting in front of your view. And what happens is you take out some of those layers, and actually you are seeing things very differently. So I hope that has helped to start. I'm sure that, you know, there may be some questions now, or you may have one yourself. So it's a natural pause. Yeah.
Folks, please, if you've got questions for Pennie, please do type them in and ask. You know, we're quite happy for you to do that. For those of you, there's been some, the video quality hasn't been brilliant, and I know we've had a couple of breaks in the sound during that, but not to the extent that I hope anybody lost the sense of what was being said. It was very brief, but just to let you know, this is all down to technology, folks. You know, there's nothing we can do about this. Pennie's very live here, as I am. So, and obviously I can only see what I can see of me. So I hope you're enjoying the program, but please feel free to ask questions. It was very interesting. You said about the breath work, because I breathe very consciously with the sound energy that I bring, because it's vocal energy, vocal sound. I'm very used to sort of breathing and sort of thinking at the same time. So yes, I could answer the question, but I did have to think about it a bit as well as thinking about the breathing. And what you're saying really is getting rid of old, unwanted and learned behaviors that no longer serve a purpose for us anymore. You know, we're no longer the child that needed certain things in place to help us to live. We're the adult, and we don't require them anymore.
Absolutely. You know, this is the whole point. I think for me, you know, a part of my process, and, you know, obviously I've been doing breathwork or using breathwork in my life for 20 odd years, but, you know, what it gave me was a more authentic self, you know, sense of self. And actually I became more Pennie. Because actually all of the other stuff that I had taken on board, which were other people's thoughts and other people's values and other people's way of doing things, actually lessened. And I actually began to discover myself more, and I became more authentic and more present and more able to live in the moment, and actually realize that, you know, yes, it's good to have some plans, but not over plan things, because what you then do is you lose your spontaneity, and you lose your ability to experience joy by just turning up and allowing things to happen the way that they happen and being surprised by it. It's nice to have surprises. So it's that's one of the things that I have found in my own personal process with breathwork. So, you know, it is what it is. I mean, I can talk about breathwork, and I can talk about the power of breath for days, as people know who come on my workshops. It's because what it gives you is just unique gifts, and what it helps you do is to mind the gold within you, which is just, you know, our unique essence, our authentic selves. It allows you to become empowered. It also gives you space between your emotions, energy in motion. So it gives you space between your emotions and actually you. so you don't get dragged, you don't get pulled into other people's stuff. You know where you start and where you finish. And therefore you can take, absolute responsibility for self. You can tell yourself the absolute complete truth. You don't need to lay it on somebody else, and it's you don't have to share unless you decide you consciously want to do that. And what that does is it allows you a private life as well as a public life. And it also allows you to, as I said, just explore all of the aspects of self, because we are these huge, amazing beings. And unless we actually start to explore, how do we know it's there? Yeah. And this is what it did for me, I think, more than anything else during this journey, was it allowed me to fall in love with mankind again. And to actually be fascinated by everybody else, and to look at them and realize that I didn't need to judge, because what I was doing, if I was judging, I was judging myself, and actually just looking at it and going, that's interesting. It's interesting how other people decide to do things. However, is that for me? No, it's not necessarily for me. I need to look at myself, and I need to grow self. Obviously, when I'm working, it's a totally different thing. I then go into service to other people, and that's why I call myself a divine waitress. Is I get to serve all sorts of different stuff to people, which is a marvelous thing, and it's there to nourish them. My job is to actually just serve them, and now and again I get to go into the kitchen with the big guys, which is really nice, and say hello to chef, but I leave the chef to do the cooking. And for me, the chef is the divine.
No, it's brilliant, because obviously when we were doing the exercise, it was very much the breath. You're concentrating on the breathing, which means you're letting go of everything else. That was the whole idea of the exercise, wasn't it? It's you can't think about two things at the same time. You can't concentrate. Correction, you might be able to think about two things, but you can't concentrate on two things at the same time. And if you've really got to think about them both, you can't. And so and isn't that why when something happens, it's take a deep breath, count to 10.
Absolutely. Our mothers gave us some good advice. Taking the deep breath, what it allows you is at that time is some time and space, and it in just taking that breath, and we'll take one now. It's like, and if you do the energy on the in-breath and you allow the out-breath to sigh out, what you realize is you're letting go a huge amounts of stress and tension. And when we breathe in this really uptight way, where if we're breathing sort of and what we're doing is we're feeling that we're pumping ourselves up, even to the stage where we may explode. Whereas if we allow that breath, the energy on the in-breath, and then out, what you find is the shoulders drop, everything drops, everything relaxes. And what you actually find when you're doing that more intentionally is that you shift pathology. You shift everything out. It is no longer needed. It is just moved out of the whole energy field as the energy field becomes clearer. It's very much like putting a dam in a river. If you put a dam in the river, it's unnatural. Two, it's stopping the river flowing the way that it should flow, and there's a barrier there. Once you take that bam, out again, and the water will rush back to its natural course. And what it will do is it will pick up enormous amounts of rubbish in the river and washes it out, and gives you that real cleansing type thing. So an awful lot of people will talk about that after a breath work. You know, during the actual breath work, we don't talk to people. The coaches who are providing cover for the breathwork session only give people instructions. We're not trying to engage their conscious mind again. We allow the subconscious to take over. So if someone's breathing in not a particularly helpful way, we will tell them how to breathe, or to take a breath, or to provide anything that they may need during the actual breath work to keep them safe. But we're not there to engage, as I said, in their conscious mind. So after a breath work, people sometimes like to share, but also it's a case of some people don't like to share because they feel very, you know, vulnerable with the pathology that they have, or the story. They feel too raw because they've gone through a trauma or anything else. So they don't have to talk about their process. This is an action therapy, not a talk therapy. And it's the action that actually changes people's lives. You know, we can talk about loads of different stuff for years and years and years, like I have. You know, I will lose weight this year. Yes, I'm going to go and do it. Yes, you know, and, you know, unless you actually put the action with the intent, there is no change. So, you know, talk therapies, don't get me wrong, they have their place. I think they're excellent when people need to explore things. But when people want to change things, then it takes an action therapy rather than a talk therapy. And, you know, again, the metamorphic technique, you know, the Reiki, all of these things are much more action-based, because, you know, it may be passive action, but it's more action-based because somebody's lying on a couch and receiving a treatment or whatever it is that they're needing. I suppose breath work is very much, it's action-based, because people are actually you know, needing to use some energy to use the breath technique, and that's what gives them, and that's why it is so superb. I've got a great friend of mine, an American lady who did the body soul breathwork training with me, who's a doctor of psychology, and she would basically say that one breathwork is worth 10 years in psychotherapy, and she should know. She's a psychotherapist, so you know, it is amazing results, and this is why, you know, people just turn around and go, "Whoa, I wasn't expecting that."
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people who start the meditation with breathe in love and breathe out anger, or so you're breathing in a positive energy and you're letting go of a negative energy. So breath work in its own way comes into many different things anyway. It's just that what you're doing is concentrating it specifically to breath.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we do, again, some of the energy work that we do is we do something called healing sounds, which is colours and different emotions, and breathing out in different ways and using different sounds to shift breath, and which is very effective. However, breath for life is very different from that. It is used, breath for life is used to help you clear subconscious clutter, and it is used to help you clear out what is no longer needed, and it could be, as I said earlier on, it could be a trauma, it could be you didn't get on with your mother or your father, or, you know, it could be a decision that you made when you were young. One of the breathworks I had, I can remember clearing, was a decision I made when I was 3 years old. And I had a brother who was 18 months older than me, and he was like a god. I thought he was just absolutely, at 3 years old, you know, he was a god. And he went and to school, to prep school, and came home and said to me, you know, Penny, I don't like little girls. And I stood there and I thought, I can remember the whole of this situation. And I can remember saying, well, that's okay, because I'm not a little girl, I'm your sister. So that's okay. So what I realized was I went through life making every male friend or every male in my life like my brother. They were friends. They were not potential lovers. They were not potential partners. They were just like my brother. They were all my brothers. And I used to say that to myself, oh, they're just like my brother. And I had these amazing friendships with guys. I still have amazing friendships with guys. But I could never have a serious relationship with anybody. It would last 3 weeks. If it was an intimate relationship, it would definitely only last about 3 weeks. And my sister used to laugh at me and say, oh, Penny, oh, who are you in love with this week? And it would be, you know, very, very short relationship, because as soon as I started to like them, they then suddenly went on to a brother type link. And then if it was a brother, then I couldn't have a relationship with them because they were my brother, not a lover. So, and this ran my life, absolutely ran my life, until I did the work to undo it and actually got to it in a breath work where I suddenly just switched it. And since then, after then, I very, very wonderfully met my husband, who is my twin soul, and we have a fantastic relationship. But it wasn't until then, and I had done the work to undo it, that it released what was going on. And that is the power of breathwork. That's what can happen during a Breath for Life session, is people will go back to stupid little decisions they may have made. Because at the age of 3, I didn't know the power of that.
No.
But it just happened, and it had been running my life. And you know, one of the talks I give is why is this happening to me again? And we talk a lot about that, and it is very much about clearing stuff. Unfortunately, I mean, we have huge amounts of stuff in our lives that we haven't dealt with. And you know, when people say to me, Penny, well, why has this not changed? And I said, because you haven't done the work in order to shift it yet. And it's okay. And you know, during a breathwork, it's amazing how breathwork, and that's why I do love the name Bodhi Soul breathwork. Bodhi Soul means enlightened soul breathwork. So you know, it's very much about realizing we have a soul. And you know, part of our soul journey is to get ourselves clear of some of this pattern, some of this patterning, and some of this stuff that we've been carrying, in order to free the soul. You know, so the soul is free and can decide to live a wonderful life, instead of being stuck into patterns, stuck into being, you know, walking around Sainsbury's and you hear a kid shouting, and what you want to do is lay down on the floor and shout with them, or actually tell their mothers, you know, that person is not behaving very well. And we get dragged into different stuff, basically because it hurts us, because of something that's going on in our lives that we haven't healed yet. So hopefully that has given people a little bit more of an overview of what breathwork is about, and hopefully you'll want to explore more. And I would say, you know, by all means, you know, get in touch if you would like to, and go onto the website, have a look at what you think. You know, don't just blindly accept something because I'm saying it's true. Go and investigate it yourself. Go and find out whether it will work for you. Breathwork, I would say to you, and definitely Breath for Life, will work for probably 85% of people. Okay. However, you know, the rest of the people will not enjoy it, and that's okay. And I think it's really important to use your discernment and find out whether you're going to enjoy it by doing something like a taste a day, or maybe talking to somebody else, or just joining one of our calls maybe at some stage, so you can talk more about it. And don't do some things that you don't feel resonates with you. And I think that's really important, because, you know, as I said, yes, breathwork and Breath for Life is probably my first love, but that doesn't mean I don't love Reiki and I don't love everything else that I do in my life. That's really important too, I think. So thank you, Matthew, for your comment of, yes, meeting you has changed my life too.
Yeah, folks, Matthew has written, meeting Pennie and being introduced to breathwork has transformed my life in so many ways. Without a doubt, the best thing I have ever done. And what I've done is I've put her website up, which is acorntoak.org.uk. So please feel free to check that out. Folks, if you're watching the YouTube video, I will make sure tomorrow morning, my tomorrow morning that is, because it's evening here in the UK, I'll put that at the website address underneath the YouTube video. If you want to find it immediately and you've lost it already, on the side panel, it's on the website. On the About Us page, you'll find the information, the bio for Pennie, and you'll find the website address there as well. So please go and investigate, go and find out, because this is why these programs are shared, is so that you can find out for yourself what's out there. We can share a little. And that's what it's about. It's just about letting you know what's available. And as Pennie said, not everything resonates with everybody, but if this does resonate with you, then brilliant. Pennie, thank you very, very much for being here. Any final any final words you want to say to people?
Just, I think really more than anything else is to encourage people to be open-minded, to look at things. You know, there's a process when we start to wake, when we start to question a little bit about what life is. It's really, you know, we start to look at it and we go through a process of beginning to read the talk, read what other people are saying, or, you know, maybe picking up books, or listening to people at the train station, or listening to radio programs, or hearing some funny story or whatever it is, and it just may move us. And we look at it and just go, okay, so, and then we go through reading the talk. So we're talking the talk, we're reading the talk, and then we begin to start to read the walk, what other people are doing, what meditations, what visualizations, what this, what that, what the other. And we're still in the exploration side, way of looking at things. And then we begin to maybe join workshops, maybe do some classes or whatever it is. And we're still moving along the path a little bit, and we get to the stage where we're actually beginning to walk the talk, or talk the walk. On, you know, there's a lot of toing and froing, and then we actually get to a stage where we're actually committing to ourselves quite deeply, and we start to walk the walk, and we think, that's it, I'm starting to walk the walk. Then we actually begin to realize that that's okay, but that's actually walking the walk. What about walking my walk? And we move again into another way of being, of walking your walk, being more authentic, being absolutely true to self. And then we realize that actually the last stage, and not many people get to this stage, then you suddenly realize that there is the divine in this, and you start to walk the divine walk. And that's when you allow yourself to go into service to other people, and you actually begin to realize that, yes, you know, self is not so important, but what I can do and what I can bring to others is much more important than my little ego. And it is a fantastic way of living. However, it is a process, and we all, you know, we all have days where we can walk the divine walk, and we all have days where actually we can't do that, and you know, we're not enlightened yet. That's the goal. We're not enlightened yet, and it's then being generous to self and letting yourself off the hook, and not actually taking yourself so seriously, and realizing that, you know, if we're taking ourselves seriously, that is ego. That is not the divine. That is not our birthright. Our birthright is joy and happiness and spontaneity. You know, if we're taking ourselves too seriously, then we're missing the mark. And I think one of the things I actually wrote the other day, and I put up on the newsletter, is when you think you're awake, what I should have written probably is, when you think you're awake, you're missing the point. But what I actually wrote was, when you think you're awake, you're in danger of losing your heart and soul. And I think that is just sums it up for me. Is, you know, there was a great teacher, Paramahansa Yogananda, who was part of the the head of the Self-Realization Fellowship, and he talks about life being like going to the movies. And you go to the movies, you buy your tickets, you're in there, and you sit down in your chair, you've got your popcorn and your hot dog and everything else, and the movie starts. And the movie could well be basically, it could well be a comedy, it could well be a horror, it could be a rom-com, it could be science fiction. And soon enough, after a few minutes, you start to identify with the characters that are on the screen. You gasp when they shocked, and you grip your seat if it's a horror, and you may cry if it's Bambi or whatever it is that you're actually watching. But what you don't do is you don't turn around and look at the projectionist screen, and all that's coming out of that box is white light. And it's projecting those characters on that screen. If you got up and you walked to the projectionist box, you went in, you took out one film and you put in another film, what is on the projectionist sheet, the screen, would change. And what that tells me is, if you want to change what is going on in your life out there on the big screen, what you have to do is you have to go back inside self and change that film. And that's when I was talking about those filters that we see through. Yeah, that's when the filters change. That's when your life changes. So I really invite you all to go and do your own research and find out something that is going to help you change what is going on out there. Go within, or you go without. Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant. Have you heard of the book Breathwork Experience by, is that Quaile-Pearce?
It's not one that's come on my
your radar.
My radar yet. However, that doesn't mean it's not good. So that's you, Nish. Yeah, it's niche. we could talk about that off call.
Absolutely. Because the one thing we never do is say anybody's wrong, because everybody is right for somebody. And so, so that's really important. And John's just said, I've learnt Reiki and a little breath work with Pennie. Whoops, that's sorry. Sorry, the thing moved. And the other folk at Acorn to Oak. And it's been a great journey, and I'm only just started. And Nisha said, thanks for sharing your time. Really appreciate it. And great seeing you again so well after so long. Very powerful. And Karen has said, thank you very much. Very interesting. I love your metaphors.
I must admit, I do share a lot in stories. I think stories are very, very, very powerful and really important, because we can all see them there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much indeed to you, Pennie. Next week we are being joined by Melanie Pledger, and she's going to be sharing why you're already good enough and always have been. Now, Melanie is, and I've lost it, where's my thing gone? Melanie is the founder of DNA Light Up, and so within her title, that is actually what she's going to be talking about. So please do join us for next week's program. A very big thank you again to Pennie for joining us this week, for all that she's shared with us. I hope you'll investigate further at her website. As I said, that will go under the YouTube video. That is already on the website and will be for the next week after the program, so that you can find it there. Folks, have a wonderful week. We'll see you next time. Love, peace, and light to you all. Namaste.